In 1979, Joe D'Amato cemented himself as a master of horror exploitation. Beyond the Darkness is violent, nonsensical, and at times extremely disturbing. I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this is the Italian Horror Guy podcast. So, this was I'd say, pleasant return, perhaps. Um, I, I remember, picking up this film uh, as a local JB Hi-Fi. There's a local reference, and adding it to my collection of Italian horror films. It never quite fitted in. It was somewhere definitely in the exploitation realm, but certainly not of the quality of the Argentos or Bava at his best or Fulci. But, as I built out my understanding of the genre, I think I understand now where these types of films fit in, which is that cross section of sort of sexual exploitation films and out and out horror. And as this film goes along, it becomes clear that this is quite a bit of both. I think the sort of European or Italian sensibility is much more oriented towards the sexual and nudity and being more comfortable with it. But at the same time, when you understand the way they exploit such things, it's also, often goes past the edge of morality. I think it's just generally speaking worth understanding a little bit how the sort of background of Joe D'Amato, how it led to him doing this type of thing. So I'm just going to go briefly through a little bit of his Wikipedia page. So he's also known as Aristide Massachesi, or should I say also known, I think that was his actual name, and he just shortened to Joe D'Amato most of the time. Like most Italian directors, he had quite a strong production background, and worked across many genres. And certainly in this era, as much as it's nice to think like, oh, look, here's this weird director who fell into or who was part of the Italian horror cinema subgenre. What is reasonable to assert is that most of these guys were either fell into it or they weren't even particularly in it. So Joe D'Amato, while probably being most infamous for Anthropophagus, which I'll be doing next month, is more, I'd say, I get the impression he was about the more sexual exploitation types of films. So it says here that he, let's have a look. First work as cinematographer and director. So he was a cinematographer in a couple of Umberto Lenzi Gialli, A Quiet Place to Kill, or one Umberto Lenzi Giallo, and Massimo Dallamano's What Have You Done to Solange? He did some spaghetti westerns. He was a director for the first time in 1972 on a Western film. And eventually he became a porn director. Now, I think at this point in history, we understand that porn's quite a common thing, but my sort of mental relationship with porn of this era, like 50-ish years ago, and more specifically the people that made it, they seem like very seedy sort of guys. Not that anyone who makes it probably isn't particularly seedy, but particularly in this era, it was a new thing, like pushing new boundaries and that kind of thing. And I guess, in all seriousness, some of the more pornographic elements of Beyond the Darkness, I am not a fan of. They make me quite uncomfortable because obviously combining sexuality with violence is, we're crossing into an area that's quite bad. It doesn't, but where it's uncomfortable is that it attempts to titillate through nudity, but the nudity is often of dead people, and it's very uncomfortable. And I guess I guess it's in there that you sort of wish that Mr. Diamato actually had something interesting to say. And to be honest, I'm not really sure that he did have anything interesting to say. So disappointing as that may be, I suppose at least he entertained. But even then, I've always found Beyond the Darkness a little bit boring. It's more boring with quite a lot of moments of like um over the top nonsense, but it's not particularly thrilling. But anyway, we will get to that. So um you know, so we did a couple of first films with Laura Gemser and the Black Emanuel series. Emmanuel's Revenge, which he co-directed with Bruno Mattei, was one of several films at the time whose titles alluded to the successful French erotic film Emmanuel. In retrospect, it was a kind of turning point in Diamato's career, being his first pornographic film, though still softcore. And I think that's where it goes. Like, for a start, anyone directing with Bruno Mattei probably doesn't necessarily have that much credibility, but he sort of falls into this very pornographic, you know, it's, I don't know, it's just very like nothing, very unimpressive. Like, I know that sounds simplistic, but it's just, I don't think, generally speaking, porn has anything to say. And if you are or were in that genre of, or that culture of exploiting or putting together whatever you can possibly sell, for whatever reason, I tend to find people that fell more into the horror side of things to be a little bit more credible. And bringing the pornographic into the horror film, to me, dilutes or manipulates what I think I'm comfortable with it actually being. So anyway, that's a little bit of a vague background on Joe Diamato. So I guess I might as well get into Beyond the Darkness, the moment that you've all been waiting for, obviously. And I've got to say, it's not exactly a roller coaster, but it nearly is. Now I know that sounds very non-committal, but I think my issue, aside from some of the ones I've just laid out, with this particular film, is that it can't, given what's going on, it should at least not be boring. And yet it is. Like, everything feels rather toned down. I think that's one of the problems, that when, look, you could say that it wants to focus on the gore or the nudity or the horror. I understand that. But like, the goblin theme is toned down. It feels like they just recorded on an afternoon, didn't put much effort into it, because this, compared to their scores for some Argento films, is just lazy. But like, we have these lengthy moments of pretty horrific things, like bodies being cut up and whatever, and you're like, I think it's that nothing that happens is ever a particular surprise. Certainly not once the tone of the film is set, and sometimes films, or usually films, will sort of, when something shocking or surprising happens, they'll embellish it and they'll sort of use music or whatever to show how um, wow, how surprised you're meant to be. Now, this film, it does that a few times. It has scenes where you would expect it to do that, but it doesn't, and it's shocking at first. But then you sort of get used to it, like when our main, like the main guy. I better check out his name. Um, what is his name? Kieran? No, Francesco. That's right. And they call him Frank. Um, he seems normal, and then he does like horrific things. Then he seems normal, does horrific things, and this pattern just continues for the whole film. You know, so it just becomes a little bit tedious. Nonetheless, it does make a pretty good start. I think I usually do, or I often do, take note of how these films kick off. And I know it's simplistic, but you feel like you're in for a reasonably interesting movie in the first moments. It's just Frank driving. He's just driving on a country road. Um, I sort of noted down here that the score is inquisitive. Um, and I I I know it's probably just a budgetary thing, and they've got to fill in time somehow. And someone like D'Amato maybe doesn't deserve credit for things that are more just coincidences. But what this thing does do is highlight the isolated nature of all this. That is absolutely a positive. The you know Those sort of a beautiful, isolated, hilly Italian places. Or I believe this was filmed in the very northmost area of Italy. Um, that and these sort of old houses. Uh, it's atmospheric. It's nice to be there, and it does, of course, emphasise how in trouble anyone will be should they come across this guy. But whilst that's the case, I just don't. I don't know if the film takes full advantage of it. So, let's start with some Wikipedia plot. Since his parents died in a car accident 9 years ago, Francesco Koch, an affluent 25-year-old, has been living with his wet nurse and housekeeper Iris in a villa at the outskirts of a South Tyrolean town. Iris, who wants to marry Francesco and become the new lady of the house, hires a witch to curse his fiancée, Anna. So, I didn't know what a wet nurse was, so I looked that up, and that's weird. This is where, and it's immediate. This is where D'Amato loses me. He has all these weird things. I think my understanding is he's been a little bit obsessed with incest in some of his movies. He's interested in bizarre sexual situations. Very much a master of exploitation films. The problem that I have is why. Like, why? I understand you're going to explore stuff in more pornographic films, but this is clearly sold as a horror film. What does he have to actually say, though? Why is this the case? And the thing is, when you at least strike as the kind of person that's just, or the kind of director that's just like, oh well, let's get this out there and create a bit of controversy and make some money. Like, okay, fine, but plenty of people have done versions of that in the past, and succeeded, but they've also had something interesting to say. What is this movie saying about anything? Okay, so um, there's no explanation. Like, is this the kind of film where curses are a thing? I don't know. Um, but look, what I will say in its credit, we really, for the most part, are dealing with Frank and Iris, and I guess his dead girlfriend, played by Cynthia Monreale, uh, who is always fantastic, bit of a Fulci specialist, especially around this time. Um, it's pretty clear immediately that Iris is like questionable. I don't think we trust Iris. And Frank is very nice looking. He's got very kind eyes. And he doesn't seem to be a particularly competent actor. So he's just like, he seems safe. But then he just does horrific things. So one of the difficult things about this movie is who do we root for? And the answer is probably the random people that he comes across and then within 5 minutes just murders. So we don't really we don't really get much to sort of go, to go with. So Anna is the name of the girlfriend. She falls ill and she dies, and she reveals she wants to make love with Roberto at least once before she dies. Roberto, even though it's Frank. Good work, Wikipedia. So I think they kiss and then she dies. And okay, there's a little bit of context. Then then Frank is at home and he's sad, and I think he's looking at a picture or something. And then Iris comes in and proves that she's his wet nurse. She comes and breastfeeds him. And I think she like calls him, it says here, her little baby boy. And the thing is, she seems slightly mocking of him, but like she's also doing it. And she also, as it turns out, wants to marry him. So I don't even know if the film itself can get their ridiculous story straight. And I don't think that's through like creative, clever writing or anything like that. So the thing is, like, what the hell is this character that they've created in Iris, and what the hell is this character that they've created in Frank? I guess if we want to analyze it a little bit, we can be like, well, he's a bit infantile. He's very infantile for a 25-year-old man. Do we take from that he is, let's say, has a not very good relationship with his, with people, because his parents died. Now, it says on Wikipedia that they died 9 years ago, which means that this isn't some kind of case necessarily of Arrested Development, because he was 16 when they died. So what does that mean? That his wet nurse came back when he was 16, or she was there the whole time? Okay, whatever. I think this is the porn logic coming in to the D'Amato film. The problem with it, I think, is that I think this isn't a horrific porno. This is a pornographic horror film. I'm quite convinced of that. I think it's a horror film. So it's just the events of the film come first, as in the plot. The horrific plot comes first, and the pornographic elements come later, I think, in terms of priority. So the problem is, then you put these weird, stupid things that only a porn director would come up with into a film that, to be honest, actually has a more interesting premise. Like, I mean, it's stupid, obviously, But this idea of our main character being not being able to let go of his wife, and she's died, and he's trying to preserve her or whatever. Like, that's a pretty horrific idea. Um, and I don't think the film forefronts that enough. I mean, that is the thrust of the film, but instead we're always distracted with this ridiculous um, sexual stuff. I guess what I'm saying is I think this film had a little bit more potential than it actually delivers in the end, which is I think a little bit disappointing. And so uh, Francesco injects Anna's body. Um, I guess it's like it says here it's a preservative, but uh, it says with preservative so that he can dig her body up and be with her forever. That's a serious preservative. Like he does inject a bit, but it's a whole body. Um, is that how that works? um, so this is another one of those examples, I think, of the film having like a, I guess, sort of horrific element, and but it just taking forever. Like I don't think that D'Amato quite got the suspense right. As a general rule, because a lot of the suspense in this film is this character going to be seen by other characters doing something, right? Whereas, as a general rule, suspense in horror films is like, is this person going to die or whatever? What keeps happening in this film with those moments, as when people are going to die, is it seems to be extremely clear that the character's in some trouble, and the minute they notice they're going to be killed, and then that happens. And I just think there are some situations that they could have drawn out with the two main murders of the women that I'll get to as we go along. So, but this scene where he's injecting the body, it's in a way it's a sort of effective scene, like, and you can only do this by drawing it out a little bit. He's standing there, he's like observing the body, and the coroner guy or whoever he is comes in briefly just as he's got his needle out, or syringe out, and he comes in a way that suggests he definitely would have seen him out of the corner of his eye. But because it's a movie, or this is how it appears, because it's a movie, like, well, he doesn't see him. And then once the guy leaves the room, he brings it out again. But maybe he did see him, because then he opens the door and he peeks and watches him doing it. Now, this is interesting enough. You do wonder how Frank didn't see him looking at him. But it's also sort of nonsensical in that, like, why doesn't he just ask him what the fuck he's doing? Because this guy, look, I said he's a coroner, maybe some kind of police person. I don't know. I don't really care. It's not made that clear, or maybe it is, but who cares? Why does he just not be like, hey, man, what the fuck are you doing? And then, the obvious thing is, well, so the movie can happen. Well, yeah, except it's probably not that important that this scene is in it anyway. It says here mortician. Okay. Then there's a funeral. I just want to make quick mention of this. I don't know what it is or why it is, but every time, or most of the time, that funerals seem to appear in these Italian horror films, there's always a lot of shots of these weird, they're like weird POV shots, but not necessarily from an actual POV. It's like a handheld camera, and for some reason, it always just seems really low production value. I'm thinking of like some of like Fulci's really late films. He's like late 80s, early 90s films where the whole budget was terrible and like they're quite cringe. It looks a lot like that, and I don't understand why. I don't think they ever look good. Anyway, I just thought I'd make quick mention of that, because the funeral otherwise is pretty much not noteworthy at all. Um, so Frank, he goes and digs up the body. And you know, I think this sequence is it's probably the best sequence in the film. I think it is by some distance, actually. Um, so he goes and gets the body, and he puts it in the back of his van. What I like about this is this is where the small budget and the sort of make do with what we've got nature of the film actually really works. Like we've got a van and we've got access to a road, um, and it's these elements of horror films I think that really come through. There's a grittiness to it. There's a look right into the heart of how the depths of evil in the human soul or whatever. So he's driving along and he's trying to remember the order of events. I'm pretty sure he drives past, or a policeman maybe pulls him over. No, he gets a flat tire, and he's changing it, and a policeman pulls over and asks if he's okay, and he says yeah. So it just builds a little bit of tension. Just builds a little bit of tension. Now, again, as much as this is the best sequence in the film, it doesn't build it quite well enough because I think there just needs to be a moment where it feels like the cop's going to look in the van. I know it's a bit cliche, and to be honest, those types of scenes often annoy me, but he deals with him so easily that, like, who cares? Maybe you could say that, the real threat's not from the cops, it's from normal people or whatever, because he gets back in the car and then he drives and there's a hitchhiker with what turns out to be a very annoying British accent. But he drives past her and I think she swears at him or something. But okay, actually, sorry, I've got it correct. That's when he does the tire. So he sees her first, then he does the tire, and he pretty much immediately does the tire, and he ends up maybe a couple hundred meters down the road from the girl, or maybe not even that. Then the cop comes and sees him. He disappears, and then the woman catches up, and she just gets into the van. Even though he's very clearly ignored her. In fact, now that I think about it, what the fuck is she doing? This is some poor writing. Like, look, even if there is an explanation, I don't remember what the explanation is, but whatever it isn't good enough for why this woman is hitchhiking in a very isolated Italian place at night. Like, it's bizarre, and it's clearly there just because this is the scene that they want. And she's a bit of a free spirit, and she's lighting up, and she's she's puffing away, and she's sort of having an annoying conversation, or annoying one-way conversation, and Frank's relatively silent. This is a semi-convincing element, though, because she does seem so high, or at least so chilled based on her highness, that she is happy to just wax lyrical while he ignores her. Like, who cares? Whatever. She keeps offering him stuff, and I think he keeps refusing. And then there's that scene where, like, and they establish this early, that the dividing thing, I don't know what you call it, but the dividing roller door thing between the front of his van and the back, it's already been established that it's not closing properly, and then it starts opening. And the arm of the body of his girlfriend is coming through the gap, and it's nearly, it's nearly touching the hitchhiker girl, and she's just smoking away, and she's relaxed, and her eyes are closed. Now, and this is a serious moment of tension. Of course, if she does catch it, he'll just kill her anyway, so who cares? But this is where a couple of elements of this film let it down. And again, I want to be clear, it's a great scene. So he notices, and he tries to, as best he can, chuck the arm back in to the back of the van and close it without her noticing. And he does, and he does. Couple of issues here, though. One is he's a horrible actor. So I think he's trying to convey panic, but he doesn't seem that panicked. More like stressed. The other is, it goes without saying that in moments like this in films, we're barracking for the moment for them not to get caught. The problem, though, is that we don't like this guy. He's evil. And he is, in some ways, not the villain of the film necessarily up to this point. He's just really fucked up. We know he's acting in a villainous way, obviously. He's driving around with the corpse of his wife, who he's just, he's just dug up out of the ground. So he's not necessarily a good guy. But, like, we naturally are like, oh, no, I hope he doesn't get caught. But he should get caught, so it's difficult to know who to bag for. And then when it turns out later that it's very clear she was never going to survive him, it seems all a little bit redundant. Anyway, so they get back, and this is where it gets a little bit ridiculous, right? Like, why doesn't he kick her out of the van? Like, immediately, or at least try to drop her off somewhere? The thing is, I think you want films to earn their moments, right? And it feels to me like this film doesn't quite earn the sequence where the hitchhiker catches him, because he's acting in a way that makes it basically impossible that he won't get caught. It's not clear what his plan with the hitchhiker is. She just sort of dozes off in the van, and he just drives back to his house and parks in the garage, locks it, of course. But when he gets, she's sort of asleep in the van. And then he just goes to the back of the van and grabs his wife's body and just carries it next to the van into wherever he's carrying it. So, it says here, upon reaching the villa, Francesco unloads Anna's body and starts disemboweling it in his workshop. In the process, he bites into her heart and installs glass eyes into the sockets. Okay, to be fair, how do I word this? This is a pretty well put together scene. I will give this moment credit with. We know that he's fucked up. We know that he's quite disturbed, possibly evil. What he's doing is evil, but it could be the actions of a very disturbed man. The heart looks good. And it seems like he's about to bite it. Now, one of the problems with it is this doesn't really make sense. I don't know. Is he trying to? Is he being? I don't know. How would you put it? He's trying to be with her forever by eating her heart or some nonsense. The point is, it's quite disturbing because regardless of how disturbed he's been to this point in the film, and it's pretty disturbed, he's injected his wife with something to preserve her body and he's dug her up out of the ground. He hasn't killed anyone though. So we don't know just how bad he is. So when he does bite the heart, we're like, oh, this is how bad this character is. And because of what he looks like and his sort of muted nature, we don't know necessarily just how deranged he is. We do after this though. And he puts in some glass eyes after pulling her eyes out, I suppose. It's pretty disturbing. But what's his plan with the hitchhiker? I don't know exactly where the workshop is in relation to the garage, but I don't think it's very far away. So his grand plan for not getting caught was what? She just stays asleep? Because it's not clear that he necessarily wants to kill her. Or is he just that indifferent that he's like, I'll just kill her when she wakes up, whatever, I don't care. So she does wake up. She wanders into the workshop, but this isn't a bad scene. She I think I think she comes across like a monkey or baboon or something that's been uh, taxidermied. And I haven't actually made mention of the psycho elements of this film, but I guess I might as well before I forget. There are a lot of psycho elements in this film. The interior of the house seems like it's modeled to be very similar to the psycho house. The way Iris dresses is a lot like Mother, and when her hair is in a bun, it is almost identical, and I suspect consciously so, to the hair on the corpse of Mother in Psycho. I think that's really cool, even though it's sort of basically ripping it off. And then later, when the cops come over or whatever, they go into a sort of basement or certain area, and there's all this taxidermy stuff. To me, that's getting a little bit silly because, like, evidently taxidermy is his nature. But at the same time, like, they don't quite. What would you say? They don't quite lean into it as much as they probably should if they really, really want us to believe that this is, this is him or whatever. But that's cool enough. So anyway, she walks past a taxidermy baboon or whatever, and it's a pretty good scene when she wanders into the workshop, because he's like working on Anna at the back, and it's not necessarily immediately clear what's going on. It's clear to us because we've already seen it, but I guess your first instinct when you see this wouldn't be, oh, he's definitely disemboweling a body. So that's pretty good, and she's, he sees her, and then I think she panics and like she kicks a bucket. Ironically, that's quite humorous, actually. Probably not what they were thinking. And what happens then? I guess he catches her. They fight. She scratches him a bit. And then, that's right, he scratches her, and then... Sorry, she scratches him, and then he rips her nails off with some pliers and then chokes her to death. So they dress Anna up, do Frank and Iris. And then there's a long scene, a disturbingly long scene of Iris chopping up the body. And Frank is just there pouring some kind of acid or whatever into a bathtub because they're going to dissolve the body. And like, look, the way they undress the body, and it's clearly a very sexualized shot. This is far more pornographic than it is horror. Is the shot of the body, and then they're just chopping up, and this scene goes so long. It is exploitation film 101. It's good. It's interesting, I guess, that like Frank is very disturbed by it, and Iris seems to be doing most of the evil stuff. But I don't understand the point of it, though. Like, what is it saying? I don't think it's saying anything. I think it's just he's disturbed, so whatever, because he is a piece of shit. He's doing all this evil stuff, and they're just chopping her up one by one, and limb by limb, they're just chucking it into the bathtub, and it's not very pleasant. It's not very pleasant. So they then they pour the few. Well, we see a bucket or two maybe of dissolved body parts and bits of flesh that are still slightly intact, and they're just pouring that into the ground. And like, this is one of those moments in the movie where we're like, I I don't know what to make of this because it is very much normalizing horror, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for a horror film to do. It's interesting. But it becomes so long and it's so musicless for the most part that we're like, can you get on with it? It's sort of like the film is almost trying to desensitize you to it, but it's almost testing you. It's so disgusting that even though it's not necessarily making a big deal of it, you're still going to make a big deal of it in your head just because of how disgusting it is. And then to really emphasize that, they're soon after this, I don't know what the hell Iris is eating something. To be honest, it's not entirely clear to me that she isn't eating some of the body. Whatever the fuck she's eating, though. It says tripe on Wikipedia here, but I'm not convinced. Anyway, it's so disturbing and just awful to watch. And then Frank vomits because he's disturbed by it too. And I'm like, okay, so what? But again, what's the film saying? Like, oh yeah, he's very. He might be disturbed, but he's not disgusting. But then you're like, yeah, but he did eat the heart that he ripped out of the chest of his dead wife. So if he's gonna do that, then why would he be disturbed by this? I don't know. Who knows? Then later he's looking at Anna's corpse, and then Iris comes and starts masturbating him. Okay, what is this relationship? What are we doing? Who the fuck knows? And then it becomes clear that the film is out of ideas because we then meet another random female who is also good looking that Frank finds in an isolated place. And then we just basically go through the same process. Like, okay, this time, like last time he was annoyed and she was a hitchhiker. This time he's like got a sexual attraction to her or whatever. But just, like, this is shocking writing, really, isn't it? Like, oh, we need something to happen. Oh, Frank just runs into a woman. So anyway, he's going for a jog in his local area. And she's going for a jog. It's some very, very short shorts. And she just sort of leans down dramatically and says, oh, I've hurt myself. Doesn't appear that she's hurt herself, but don't want the actress to actually do it. So she can't really move, and Frank's right there to help her, and she's got an important race coming up, so that'd be really sad if she couldn't make that. So anyway, he's like, my house is right around here, so you might as well just come to my house, I suppose. It has to be said, I don't know if it's credit to the film or not. I actually don't. That, like, Frank, that the actor has such a low range, like he does, but whether he was partly selected for that reason. What I'm saying is, he seems indifferent or even pathetic and definitely disturbed, but sad and all this kind of thing. In a way that, other horror films tend to at least forecast that this person might be about to do something horrible. In the way they're acting, a look that they give or something that they say or whatever. But Frank doesn't really do that. He's just like, yeah, I'll come and, we'll go and I'll patch you up or whatever. So he's just there. She's in his bathroom or whatever, and he's like wrapping up her leg and foot. And he seems to know what he's doing. And then there's a little bit of tension going on, and I think he goes to kiss her, and she's like, oh, wait, And then it's just clearly established they're going to go have sex, basically by looking at each other in one line of dialogue. But that's cool. Frank's a good-looking guy. She's a good-looking girl. I suppose it's possible that this would happen. But was this his plan, or did it just sort of happen? I guess we could say maybe that's what it's like. Frank, he just can't control his impulses, but he also doesn't necessarily go out of his way to do this kind of thing. It just sort of keeps happening. So they make out or whatever, and he goes to the bedroom, and the bedroom seems to have two single beds next to each other, unless I'm looking at it wrong, and it's like one big bed, but it seems to be two-ish single beds next to each other. And they're making out, and again, they take some of the... They take the suspense away. I think there's an opportunity for more suspense here, and it's a little bit disappointing for mine that we don't get it, because so they're making out, and pretty much immediately, within like, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds, he exposes the body of Anna, who's lying there. And I guess the thing is, he's gonna pretend that he's sleeping with Anna when he's sleeping with this girl. Whatever, okay. And then like, she's just sort of like, she's right there, and Frank's making no attempt for the girl not to see him, and she's on her back, and eventually, but her face is sort of facing that way, but her eyes are closed, and then she opens them, sees him, and screams. And you're like, well, Frank, what the hell did you think was going to happen? And then he just bites a big chunk out of her neck, and she dies. And it's just like, okay, like, all right, I'll humor this. It is horrific. This is good horror film stuff. It's right up there on the disturbing scale. That's fine. That's what we want. I think he actually made a film called Disturbed. So, that's his thing. That's okay. But like, in both cases, these two women that he kills, in both cases, we're like, oh, he's met this woman and she's coming to his house for whatever reason, and well, bad stuff could come from that. But yeah. And then it just happens. Like, there's no mitigating factor. It just sort of happens. So it's a good thing this doesn't really happen a third time, because then it would be too predictable a pattern. But like, it's just a bit like predictable. I think it's credit to the film that this level of disturbing or disturbed is like, it's thought through. I think the practical effect around the neck is very good. She does die very quickly. Would that happen? I don't know. He does bite a big chunk out of her neck. But then that's the end of that. Like, I just think there was more to be done with that. Anyway, that's right. He and Iris burn the corpse in the furnace downstairs. We haven't been introduced to the furnace downstairs, by the way, but we have now. And then I think some more of the bad writing of the film gets exposed, because then Iris starts getting jealous of Anna's corpse. And fair enough too. I mean, if she's in love with him and she's alive and Anna's all corpse-like. The problem though is like, all right, it feels like the film got its script backwards. Like, we've just seen Frank bite the neck out of a living woman to kill her, and then the two of them burn this woman in a furnace. And there's some pretty disturbing shots of that. We've seen them cut up another woman. We've seen him suckle her breast. We've seen him dig up the body of his wife from the ground. And now the film wants to give us the jealousy thing. Like, I don't fucking care. Like, if you'd done this first to establish a little bit of character, then that might actually make some sense. But at this stage of the film, aren't we sufficiently disturbed by everything going on to be like, I don't fucking give a shit if Iris is jealous of Frank. Frankly, these two people deserve to die. Like both of them, they seem to be equally evil. Like it's just such a strange order of events. But anyway, there's some absolutely insufferable bastards of what Wikipedia claims to be Iris's old relatives. I guess they are. They're at the house, and they're laughing away. And she announces that they're engaged. I don't know if that was absolutely confirmed. I think he agrees that he or says that he's done everything that she asked him to or something. But I don't remember, like in the previous scene, I don't remember if that actually was confirmed that he was going to marry her. But whatever, who cares? And all of these people are just absolutely insufferable. So Frank seems extremely uncomfortable, and then he just sort of walks out, and Iris is embarrassed. But again, like, what do we care? What, we're going to do an awkward engagement scene after all the other crap that we've seen? I don't think so. So whatever. Yeah, the mortician eventually comes in and starts looking around. He finds Anna's body, takes pictures. And then there's a completely seemingly unnecessary scene of him meeting some woman, very good looking woman, by the way. And she comes to his house. I guess this sort of establishes him as a little bit of a woman magnet. And fair enough, he's good looking. And then he just tells her to leave because Anna's twin sister comes up. And then it's like, okay, what are we doing now? Okay, what are we doing? I don't care. Why does Anna have a twin sister? Like, who gives a shit? I don't think she's been mentioned to this point of the film. It's just all a bit of garbage. She hears Anna's voice warning of a curse on the house or whatever. And we're like, I guess we've visited the supernatural a little bit in this film, or have we? I'm trying to think. There's probably some 2 or 3 really obvious things that I'm missing, and I sound like an idiot. But she's there, and she sort of wanders around the house. Then she sees Anna's corpse. She's sitting on a chair in the hall, very much like Psycho, and then even more like Psycho. Iris appears, and she's like a silhouette, and she's very, very, very Norman / Mother. The way this is shot, this is to the point, basically, of like ripping it off, I would say. And yeah, there's a big showdown, I guess. Lots of eyes get ripped out. I think a bit of Iris's face gets burnt off. It says here her cheek. He stabs her in the heart, which kills her. And then he listens to Theodora. That's the sister, by the way. Theodora's heartbeat, and carries her downstairs. He incinerates Anna's body, and he dresses up and makes Theodora just like Anna's corpse. There was one section that I missed where a couple of cops come over to the house and they're looking around. And I just wanted to give a special mention to a moment in that where they're, Iris is just so willing to let them come in and show that, we've got nothing to hide. And there's a scene with all the taxidermy around, and they seem slightly suspicious when they come in, but then they don't really give a shit. But she does see a shoe that would be slightly, I guess, possibly incriminating, and she goes over and kicks it under some boxes and like wraps something up as a gift for one of the cops, and they just fall for it completely. And that's just a very good scene. Yeah, all the Theodora stuff I don't give a shit about. I think it's annoying, to be honest. I don't want to be given this extra crap. Now it's silly, it's dumb, to be honest, as if the rest of the film wasn't. Um, and well, like, look, again with the poor writing, like, or lack of it, it feels a little bit like they just sort of didn't. They didn't really think through everything. Like they hadn't written enough stuff, is what it felt like. Because there's a lot of things happening, right? Frank's very disturbed. Iris is very disturbed. All these murders, all these horrible things are happening. But then to conclude the film, there's not enough there. Like we have the little drama about them getting engaged or whatever, but like, who gives a shit about that? I don't know if there's a mention of Anna having an identical twin sister or whatever, but like, it feels like very like, oh, let's add this thing in at the end just to build it out in some way. Um, and it's just at that point, look, my experience is at that point, I'm just completely checked out. Like the thing is, trying to add some convoluted and silly plot to the film at this point is so ridiculous because the plot has clearly not been their concern up to this point. You know, there's nothing much of interest happening. Everything happening is a vehicle for showing us horrific things. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but don't add some absurd plot. So yeah, he dresses Theodora up just like Anna. And then the mortician comes back. He finds Iris's corpse. And this is near the furnace. And Francesco, you know, he's dying. It's not exactly clear why. I think, well, I mean, he's had his eye ripped out, but this is a film that if you lose a little part of your body, you tend to die pretty much immediately. So he dies in front of the mortician, who seems, I guess, eventually to become some kind of main character, which is sort of funny. In fact, I'll just make a quick mention of last month's podcast, Death Smiles on a Murderer, because D'Amato seems to have this problem where the sort of last moments of a film are like really done through the lens of a barely character for the rest of the film. Like the mortician is just some guy who notices some stuff, but then we conclude the film with him, and we conclude the film with a fairly inconsequential cop in Death Smiles on a Murder. And I don't think it's unbelievable writing. Whether he wrote it, I don't know. Not going to look that up. And so he dies, and the mortician takes Theodora, whom he thinks to be Anna's corpse. Does he? Probably. I guess that would make sense. I guess that explains why there's a twin sister to create some, completely unnecessary and pointless confusion. He returns to the cemetery and places her in a coffin for burial. And then it says, while he and his assistant are about to nail down the lid, Theodora pushes the coffin open and lets out a scream. Now, I mean, I guess that's a nice generic way to end a horror movie. The problem is it's like, if you're going to have a moment like that, it should be sort of, in my opinion, it should be sort of tying together the events of the film. That doesn't tie anything together. We were only introduced to Theodora like 5 minutes ago, or 10 or 15 maybe, in order to make the film go long enough, it would seem. So I don't care about this person. Anna's dead, and you're not going to trick us because you've told her that she's, she's a twin sister. So it's like, why does the film end with a focus on this character that we, have had nothing to do with for the whole film? I don't know. Look, this has probably been a fairly negative rundown. It does have to be said that for all of this, even though it's quite boring at times, it is, let's call it engrossing, with emphasis on gross. Like, there's so much just disgusting crap going on. And it's quite disconcerting because it's like, it's disgusting crap, but it's often boring disgusting crap because they do something disturbing and then they just keep doing it for 5 minutes at a time. So there is a lot of it. But I guess in the end, it is at very least entertaining. And, I don't think it's the worst way to kill 90 or 94 minutes or whatever it is. But nonetheless, I had a very good time watching it and a very good time recording this podcast. So, this has been my discussion of Beyond the Darkness. Next month, I will be concluding my Joe D'Amato trilogy of podcasts with a discussion of the infamous Anthropophagus. And it might shock you to know I have never seen that movie before. I've seen a lot of the key bits, but I've never seen it. So this will be an interesting first time for me. I'm sure for all of my discussion on disturbing stuff today, it's probably not a patch on what I'm going to be discussing next month. So join me for that. Until then, I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this has been the Italian Horror Guy podcast.